All right, RJ, we had a little bit of an emergency Kraken news today. Um, Good news and bad news. Let's go ahead and start with the good news and get that out of the way because I think it's going to be a little bit quicker. There was some, big good news today, right?
Yes, there was. And we knew this yesterday at the Kraken were going to decide on their leadership group. They were going to have a meeting and decide what they were going to do. And in a bit of a surprise to, I think, the both of us, they did decide to name a captain. And I think they went with the obvious right choice at captain, and that is Mark Giordano. He was captain of the Flames for 8 seasons before this. He's a proven leader, and he's kind of, as I've said, been the de facto captain of the Kraken from day one. He was the first one to speak to the media. He kind of took on that role from the very beginning. So I think it's kind of the obvious choice. And I think it'll be cool to have a Kraken player wearing a C on the jersey from the get go. The Golden Knights didn't have that. Yeah, I think he's the right choice. What do you think about it, Dylan?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it on the podcast that came out today. He's the obvious choice. We both think he'll do a great job. I think he's, a total class act on and off the ice. He'll do a great job representing the organization. Couldn't be happier, and I do like the fact that we have a captain. I think that just makes things a little smoother sometimes. But why don't you fill us in on who they named as the alternates?
Yes, the Kraken named four alternate captains. They went with Jaden Schwartz, Yanni Gord, Adam Larson, and
Jordan Eberle.
Jordan Eberle. Thank you. So those are the four alternates, and it makes sense. Those are the guys who were 2 through 5 in who wore the alternate the A on the jersey for the preseason games the most. So it just kind of went straight down the list, which makes sense. And there were guys that we kind of thought might be alternate captains. Certainly, if they decide to go with a rotation, and Giordano would just be another alternate in there. So it's a good group. They've got a lot of leadership, and especially in those media availabilities after the captains were announced, every single one of them mentioned that they've got leaders up and down the lineup, and it's kind of on everyone. It's a group effort, even though they have a fantastic leader as the captain in Giordano. You've got these four guys also who have a lot of leadership experience and can play that role as well.
Yeah, leadership is definitely not going to be a problem for this team. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the bad news. RJ, why don't you fill us in on what we learned just about an hour ago?
Yeah, some bad news coming out of Kraken camp today, and one thing we noticed right away in the morning skate is that 5 players were missing. They only had 3 forward lines, and we figured, well, maybe it's just a rest day for a bunch of guys, but unfortunately, that's not the case. Already, Kalle Järnkrok was in the NHL's COVID-19 protocol, but now joining him are Marcus Johansson, Jamie Alexiak, Jared McCann, and Jonas Donskoy. So we don't have a status on whether they'll be available for the game tomorrow in Vegas for the opener, but I think it's safe to say it's not looking good. It's certainly questionable on those guys, and if so, we might have a very different opening night lineup than what Dylan and I have talked about for months. What we've all really imagined it would be. It's kind of one big curveball thrown at the Kraken now, right before the season's about to start.
Yeah, it's not the news you want kind of at the 11th hour before your season begins, but it's something the Kraken are going to have to deal with. So doing my best to make sense of what the NHL's COVID protocol is, and it does vary. They've leaned heavily into what local, state, and provincial laws are for this stuff. That plays a large role into it. It's not just kind of one set league protocol. They try to work all that in there. But as far as kind of how this all goes down, there's the initial positive test. That player then isolates and they begin contract tracing. They will then rerun that same sample to confirm, and if it does come back positive as well, which I'm assuming is the case for these 4 players, then they enter isolation, and until they can return 2 negative tests taken 24 hours apart, they can't come back. So, I think that basically rules out their ability to play tomorrow night just because of the length of that, unless the confirmation tests haven't been run yet, and maybe those come back negative. That I think is kind of their only path to playing that first game against Vegas. The other thing that worries me is, Järnkrok was put in last week, like you said. They're going to be contract tracing. There's going to be opportunities for guys to test positive tomorrow, I would assume as well. The fact that four of them have it, I got to think everyone's been pretty close together in that locker room and stuff. So I don't know that this is going to be the last we hear of players testing positive.
No, and we've seen that in other sports with other teams, in hockey too. COVID, it has a way of kind of spreading throughout a locker room. And when you get these outbreaks, you never really know the extent, and teams can just kind of be decimated by it. Yeah, I mean, we still don't, I think it's important to mention we still don't know whether any of the players involved are symptomatic at all, if there's severity of symptoms, anything like that, we don't know. But having multiple players out, it certainly reduces the chances of this being some false positive test. I think there's definitely something going on here, and yeah, it's not a good sign. And you're right, we may not have seen the end of it.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead? You and I've both been talking about what the lineup might look like for tomorrow night, assuming these four players are out, and they're the only four players that are out. So why don't you go ahead and kind of talk us through what we think is going to happen now?
Right. We've been, as you know, making our projected Kraken lineup for a while now, kind of trying to project what the day one roster is going to be. And a lot of changes here. But we've got our best educated guess of what we think it might look like. And again, this is assuming that the 5 players currently on COVID protocol will not be available to the Kraken and that nobody else will be out. And again, just caveat, this is still a guess. A lot could change from now on, but this is what we think it might be. And so for the first forward line, we've got Alex Wenberg moving up to center, Jaden Schwartz and Jordan Eberle. As long as Schwartz and Eberle are in the lineup, they're going to be the first line left and right wing. They had Wenberg up there this morning. He's kind of the clear choice. We thought he might be starting the season, as the 1C to start training camp, but it looks like it'll happen, but not the way that we had thought. That line seems to have the most clarity. What they ran as the second line today, this morning, was Morgan Geekie centering Ryan Donato and Brandon Tanev. And I don't know what the chemistry is going to be like on that line. We haven't seen anything quite like that through training camp, but I think it's just a case of you've got these 3 guys who you probably want to give extra ice time with these people out. And, we'll see if something works there. As for the third line, the third of only 3 lines they had this morning, it was Riley Sheahan centering Nathan Bastian and Mason Appleton. This one makes sense stylistically. You've got kind of the third grinding line. You've got Sheahan and Bastian who have been together for a while, and Appleton fits in really well there as well. As for the fourth line, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I think that's going to work okay. I think that's, kind of more their clear high energy line, and then the other's going to be the more physical line, the Tanev, Geeky, Donato line, just because of the size that line can bring.
Right. Now, as for the fourth line, this is going to have to be something that's thrown together based on whatever players are available. And I guess we'll go with the first one that we think is probably most likely to be available, and that's Cole Lind. He skated with the team on Friday after being waived, so they called him back up. We did not see him yesterday or this morning, so I don't know, geographically where he is at the moment. But I think he's probably going to be the easiest guy for the Kraken to get back with the team, and he's been skating with the team for a while. He's one of the last guys to be waived and cut. So he'll probably be in the opening lineup, for opening night, I would imagine. The next we have centering the line is Alex Barré-Boulet, and so the Kraken claimed him on waivers this morning, and given all the news with the captaincy, with the COVID situation, it's going to kind of get buried in the news day today, right? This waiver claim, but I think it could actually be a really huge get for the Kraken. Barré-Boulet is near point per game player in the AHL over the last 3 years, and he's just been stuck behind this stacked Tampa lineup. We talked about, the skill that they have, especially at forward, just all the way down the lineup. I think on any other NHL team, he would have gotten a chance by now to be an NHL regular. He just happens to be on the most stacked team in the league. But now he's going to get an opportunity with the Kraken, and possibly a bigger opportunity than any of us really thought he might have right away. Dave Haxtell said that it depends on travel logistics, but it is possible that the Kraken will have him available for the game tomorrow night. So personally, I really hope he's going to be there. I would like to see what he can do in the lineup tomorrow and beyond. I think he's someone who could really, make a name for himself in the NHL, and he'll have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah.
they've got, again, for anybody that they need to call up from Charlotte, potentially, anything like that, they're going to have about 30 hours from the moment you and I are talking right now before that game starts. So I would assume they'd be able to get anybody they need to be in Vegas to join the team.
Agreed. Yeah, logistically, it should work out just fine. Knowing how long a cross-country flight takes, it's not going to take the 30 hours. Should be all right. And as for the last spot on the fourth line, we kind of talked about this, a little unsure. There were a few options, but I think we both landed on Alex True as probably the most likely guy to get the call up, right?
Yeah, I mean, he played the most preseason of all the guys left, and he, I think, looked the best of all the guys that are left. The other options would be somebody like Luke Henman, but I think given the circumstances, you want the player with a little bit more experience, and it was, kind of played out there on the wing also.
Yeah, agreed. So moving on to the blue line, Alexiak, of course, the big name missing. Uh, and that does, alter the D pairs a bit. I think they're probably going to go with Giordano Fleury as the top D pair. They've been trying that out for a while the last few days, and certainly given Alexiak's absence, I think now you kind of have to stick with it because Alexiak was the key to kind of showing up that right side and getting the pairs to be different. Um, this morning they went with Susie and Larson as a second D pair, which I actually do kind of like. You've got Larson, who provides a little bit of that puck moving you like to talk about, Dylan, and Susie, of course, the more stay-at-home guy. But they're going to be solid defensively, and I think they've got everything a good D pair needs. And as for the third D pair, we talked about how we didn't really like the Lauzon Dunn pair that we've seen in the past. We figured that would be changed, but I think it's here to stay at least for the time being, given Alexiak's absence. What do you think?
Yeah, it certainly increases the chances we're going to see it. One guy kind of getting lost in all this is Will Borgen. Don't know. He might slot in. I thought he looked. I think we've all thought he looked better than Lauzon in the preseason. So yeah, we're just gonna have to see on that one. But certainly based on what's been at camp, that looks like what it's gonna be.
Yeah. And finally, I should just mention the Rock in net, Philip Grubauer. We still project to start. No news on him with COVID, so he might be very busy game one. I think the Kraken are going to need him, certainly given all their holes in the lineup right now.
Yeah, but that's the benefit of having somebody like him is you can lean on him if you have to, and he's always going to keep you in the game, and that's ultimately all you want under circumstances such as this. So that's kind of it for this emergency Kraken news. Just wanted to get all that information out there to everybody. Make sure to be following us on Twitter at Emerald City HKY. We'll be updating as we hear stuff. And then certainly we're gonna, tomorrow's a travel day for both of us going into Vegas for that game. So, we probably won't be able to record anything tomorrow morning in case, more comes up, but we'll be on Twitter letting everybody know what we know. So, but that's gonna be it. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. Otherwise, still looking forward to that game tomorrow night.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. Still looking forward to it. It'll be a fun event, no matter who's in the lineup. And yeah, let's just lean into the intrigue, lean into the suspense, and let's just have fun.
yeah, we'll do. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.